Hello, this is Skylit Lake reading Super Science by That Chicken Dude. Chapter 35. Mama. One day at Nip, Egon barges into Izuku's office and calls out in a chipper tone, "Yoo-hoo, Izuku, you." He trails off at seeing the teen hunched over his computer and typing away at lightning-fast speeds. Here? He falls off with seeing the number of papers, notes, coffee cups and other things strewn about in a mess. He gets closer to the boy and says in a careful tone, "Izuku." Without looking up from his typing, Izuku replied in a monotone voice, "Hey, Professor." Egon just stares at him for a while before trying to break the ice by saying, "You sure are working hard, and, how long have you been working?" "Don't know," Izuku replied with a small shrug, still not taking his eyes off the screen. Egon felt his phone vibrate and, taking it out, he saw a text. Looking it over, he said to the inattentive teen, "Your mother just sent me a text saying that you didn't return home yesterday." Izuku said nothing. Thinking he didn't hear him, he asked a bit louder in concern, "Have you been here all night?" Still, Izuku didn't reply, so he just yelled, "Izuku!" "Not sure," he answered casually, only stopping to drinking out of the now empty coffee cup. Egon narrowed his eyes, put his hands on his hips, and exclaimed, "Okay, that's it." He then took his young ward by the hand, yanked him out of his seat, and stated in a serious tone, "You and I are going out for lunch and fresh air." It took the teen a bit to realize what was happening, but when he did, he tried to fight back in vain to get back to his computer. "What? Huh? No, I still have a ton of work to do," he argued as he tried to reach out for it. "Don't care. You need a break," he exclaimed as he marched past the front desk, throwing off the lab coats. He said to his front desk lady, "Megan, we're going out to lunch." "Have a good lunch, sirs," Megan said while waving them off. Later, Egon and Izuku now sat at an outdoor seating for a restaurant with an American theme. Sitting at a table closest to the street at the front of the establishment, Egon chowed down on a huge burger that was twice the size of his head, though he seemed to be taking it with ease. After wiping his face, he stated with zeal, "Man, I love this thing. They have the most authentic American food in all of Japan." However, he was only one enjoying his food, as Izuku sat there and stared at it with a blank and somber expression. Taking a long sip of his soda, Egon asked him, "Izuku, you haven't even touched your Mega Meat Gut Punch burger. You can't tell me you're not hungry. You've been on a liquid diet of caffeine since yesterday." Izuku's gaze was distant, his face somber and pale with dark rings under his eyes looking darker and heavier than the last time. Whether it was from a lack of sleep or nutrition was up for debate. He looked sick, tired. Something was wrong, and Izuku was no good at lying. "I'm just thinking," he replied in a distant voice. "Anything else you want to talk about?" Egon asked while putting his food down and giving him his full attention. "No," he said with a slow headshake, making Egon look away in concern, only for the boy to suddenly perk up as he yelled, "Shit!" Surprised by this and looking around in a frenzy, Egon asked, "What?" He then followed Izuku's eyes and saw a small group of students from UA and more specifically, Class 1A, walking towards them. Shit! Egon cursed with him. They're coming this way. What if they see us? Izuku exclaimed in a panic while pulling on his face. They won't, Egon assured him firmly, and took out a splinter from his pocket. Activating the blue-colored crystal, it shone a light around them that when died down seemed to do nothing at first. Looking at himself, Izuku noticed that where Egon sat was now an old man in his 80s. When he looked down at himself, he noticed he had some kind of black and white goth outfit, and was given some attachments. Completely dumbfounded by what was happening, Izuku babbled. What is appearance-changing splinter? Just don't act like yourself. Egon quickly answered in his normal voice. Izuku did as he was told, took his phone, and pretended to look at it. Just then, a small group of UA students walked by the restaurant where they were eating. The group consisting of Mina, Kirishima, Kaminari, Zero, and Bakugo. They didn't pay the disguised scientist any mind until something caught Kirishima's attention. The redhead stopped and looked over at the scientist, and more specifically, their food. With eyes wide and mouth dripping with saliva, he asked with an excited glitter, "Whoa, that's the biggest burger I've ever seen. Hey, old guy, where did you get that from?" "The restaurant right behind me. I'm afraid they will stop making them at this time. You have to come earlier or on the weekend, but only on Saturdays." Egon put on a fake old man's voice while thumbing at the restaurant behind him. Kirishima snapped his fingers and complained, "Aw, man. Well, thanks anyway, old guy." As he left, Kaminari said to him, "Bro, did you see that goth chick? Super hot." "Yeah, but she was with that old guy," Kirishima told him, thinking up something nasty. Kaminari waved him off and stated, "Maybe that's her grandpa." Luckily for them, and Izuku most of all, throughout the whole interaction, Bakugo took no notice of them even once. Once they were out of sight, Egon took out the splinter again and turned it off. With a sigh, Egon heaved and offered, "That was too close. Maybe we should wrap up and eat back at the lab," to which Izuku readily agreed. So, the scientist packed up their oversized food, left the money on the table, and walked back towards the laboratory. On the way to it, Izuku, despite his distant glare, noticed something strange and brought it to his walking partner's attention. "Hey, Egon," the man hummed a reply as he told him, "There's a lady following us." Egon took a peek behind them and saw a very ragged, dirty, thin, and seemingly unhinged lady walking behind them a few yards away. She looked worse for wear and almost ghoul-like. But Egon tried to reassure him. "You sure she isn't going the same direction?" After several minutes of walking, and the same lady still following them, now just a few feet away, he finally admitted, "Okay, she's following us." "What do we do?" Izuku asked in concern. Egon scanned the area around him for some kind of outlet, and when he did, he cleverly pointed it out and told him, "We're nearly at the lab. Once we reach that corner, we'd run like hell." Izuku nods. Walking calmly, they resist the urge to just boot it at the very moment, even when they're only feet away from the corner. Once there, they ran like hell and didn't dare to look back. Luckily for them, they didn't seem to have to run very far, since it was only a few blocks away, so their run was quick, and they made it through the front entry in record time. "Hi Egan, bye Egan, we're back," Egon said quickly to the woman. "Welcome back?" she replied, confused. From there, the two of them ran into Egon's office, where they threw the food bags on his desk, locked his door for extra safety, before finally relaxing and breathing heavily due to the lack of exercise. "Made it," Izuku said breathlessly. "What a creepy old hag," Egon huffed between words with a hard shiver. Suddenly, they were both startled by the office phone ringing, and Egon quickly picking it up with his normal voice, answering. "Yes, Megan? Sir, there's a woman here who wants to see you, saying she knows you." Megan replies in turn. Izuku's eyes went wide at hearing this, and he mouthed out, "You don't think?" Egon shrugged and asked her, "What does she look like?" "Oh, old, desperate, ragged," Egon listed off. Egon rolled his eyes and stated, "I mean her description, not your opinion. Old, dirty, crazy grey eyes, thin as a twig, blonde hair, basically looks like a crackhead." She lifts off more in depth. Egon deflated and told Izuku, "Yep, it's that woman." "What does she want? You're not going to see her, are you?" Izuku stressed to him in concern. Egon thought for a bit when speaking to both his employees and instructing them, "Keep the silent panic alarm ready and bring the spiderweb splinter." Megan hangs up and nods while doing the secret wall compartment to pull out the needed splinter and kept it close to him. Once they both walked out of the office and back to the front entryway, they didn't even get halfway into the room when the strange man saw Egon and ran at him. "Honey!" she cried out. Egon freaked for a moment, then activated his quirk and kept her at bay with the sharp ends of his crystals while yelling, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Back off, lady! I don't know who you are, but you better keep away." The woman looked hurt by his rejection, and she told him, "What are you talking about? It's me! It's me!" Everyone was confused by his statement, most of all Egon, who replied, "You realize that 'it's me' only works over the phone, right? If you're trying to be a scammer, you better try a different angle." Now she looked insulted by his accusation. "What? No, I'm not a scammer. It's me, your mother." "What?" Izuku and Megan shouted in unison. "What?" Egon asked back with narrowed eyes, clearly not believing her. "Lady, just how dumb do you think I am? My mother is dead," he firmly stated. She then took an irritated disposition and rolled her eyes. She said, "Oh, is that what your father told you? Guess I can't blame him for how he broke things off. But I am your mother. I gave birth to you." Suddenly, something clicked in Egon's head, and he said, "Oh, wait a minute, I know you." The woman smiles at this, only to be shut when he followed up by saying, "You're that evil witch my dad would always gripe about." Her face twisted in anger as she yelled, "Evil witch? The nerve of that man! I ought to give him a piece of my mind. In fact, where is he? I'll go to him right now." "Try the cemetery," he offered while thumbing up out of the door. "The what?" she asked back in anger and shock. "Yeah, he's been dead for well over years. Him and my mum," Egon informs him. "I keep telling you that I am your mother," the woman exclaimed, clearly annoyed with him. Egon rolls his eyes at the claim and tells her, "No, you're not. Naomi was my mother. She died with my father in the same accident. The woman raises her eyebrows, which were nearly gone, and asked, Naomi? Who the hell is that? Egon sighed in irritation and explains, My stepmother. She and my dad married when I was about 6, and she's been my mother from then until she died. Do I have to keep talking about my dead parents to you? I'm gonna cry. She takes a minute to process all this and then says aloud, So, Rich is gone? Egon, clearly upset by this, half yelled, Yes. How many times do I have to tell you? Rich? Izuku inquired, noting it wasn't a normal Japanese name. My dad was half American. The woman then huffed, crossed her arms, and gritted her teeth while saying to herself, Well, this seriously puts a wrench in my plans. Plans? Egon repeated the word. Not realizing she said it aloud, she had no choice but to explain to him. I was going to get back together with your dad and be your mum again. Egon's eyes shot up as a smile exploded on his face and he laughed. What? Seriously? Stop laughing! What's so funny? She demanded. After laughing for a bit, he calmed down and told her, You, that's what. Even if my dad was still alive, he'd never get back with you. The woman took a snarky look, placing her hands on her hips while flicking her scrappy hair. She retorted, I wouldn't be so sure. I know my ways around a man's heart. Egon shivered at the display and commented, More like a man's pants. She quickly dropped the sexy hat and goes back to being angry and entitled while yelling, Excuse you? How dare you speak to me like that? I am your mother, and you treat me as such. Egon glared harshly at her and tells back, How dare I? How dare you suddenly come out of the God knows where and try to input yourself back into my life like nothing happened? I just met you like 2 minutes ago, and you expect me to treat you with any decency, courtesy, or respect? Especially after what you did. Get real. Confused by this topic, with zero context, Izuku carefully asked, What did she do? Egon laughed dryly and stated with an angry, crazed look, Oh, where do I start? The woman rolled her eyes and stated nonchalantly, Oh, come on. That all happened such a long time ago. And it sent ripples that are felt today, he yelled back while spreading his arms. The moment you found out what my dad's quirk was and what he did for work, he left me, took his money, and ran like thunder, he accused her, making Megan softly whistle and Izuku look away uncomfortably. It's your dad's fault for lying to me in the first place. If it weren't for that, none of this wouldn't have happened. Confused by her statement, Izuku once again inquired, His quirk? My dad was quirkless. Egon told him simply. From this statement, a light bulb lit on his head, and Izuku finally realized he had the answer to the whole host of questions he had in the back of the mind. He looked at the man and realized that all the things he thought of, he now knew that the man who held him so much ended up knowing more about what it was like to be him from second-hand experience. As Izuku sat in mindless thought, Egon continued his argument and half yelled, And sure, I don't agree with him lying to you like that, but he was young and quirkless aren't given the time of day or treated like dirt, and he may have lied about his job and title, but he didn't do so about his salary. That didn't make him any better. She pouted in response while looking away. Seeing her reaction, Egon clutched his hand and exclaimed in a rant, "And if stealing from him wasn't bad enough, you tried to throw me away from the moment I was born. Like literally threw me in the trash like garbage. And don't even try to say you didn't. My dad has proof, and I still have it. You could have left me at my dad's place or put me up for adoption. But no. What kind of sick animal would do such a thing?" The woman appeared just around her, and she sighed and slumped her shoulders while asking in a coy, cutesy tone, "Okay, I admit I was wrong, but can't you forgive me?" Egon repressed the urge to moan in aggravation, so instead he inquired, "By the way, Dad told me that when you ran out with him, you ditched him for another meathead with a better quirk, as you called it. What happened to him?" Her face shifts from immediate cutie to irritation, and she says in a pissed-off voice, "Oh, him. Don't even make me even remember that jerk. He was lazy, leeching, lying, good for nothing." Egon put on a fake expression of worry as he vexed. "Ah, jeez. Then why did you leave him? Sounds like you two were a perfect pair. I'm sure you made a great couple," she growled while rolling her eyes and telling him off. "Oh, don't even joke about that. Things were okay for the first 3 years until I had my second son and—" Before she could continue, Egon stopped her and exclaimed, Whoa, pump the brakes. I have a half-brother?" She looked confused by him focusing on that part, but shrugged and told him, "I guess, but he was such a pain, and even worse than his father. He got into so much trouble and eventually became a villain. My last straw was when I got a call from the police, so I left him and my son for good to find you again, and here I am. Aren't you happy?" she asked while batting her eyelashes and putting out her lower lip. On anyone else, this might have looked cute, but on a meth head that looks like her, it was disturbing. No one in the room tried to hide the instant disgust on their face. Which is when Megan asked, "Is she high?" The woman immediately turned back into a Karen and demanded, "Excuse me?" "No, she's right. Are you? 'Cause you can't be serious. If you are, then let me spell it out for you. I am not happy you're here. I do not want you to be here. I do not want you in my life. I just met you and I already hate you. I can see why my dad would badmouth you all the time. I'm sure the only reason you're here, besides your second screwed up family life, is because you heard I made it big and wanted a slice of that pie, right?" Egon accuses her. You want my money, not me, right?" Egon asks again, getting closer to her. Well, you can forget it. I don't care what situation you're in. Go crawl back to whatever hole you slinked out of and continue to stay out of my life like you have for the past 30 years. You're not my mother and you never have been, so get lost," he shouted in her face before turning around to leave. But she didn't. She stood there for a moment with her eyes down, covered over in her gaudy hair while clenching her hands. "You brat!" she yelled while jumping on his back from behind and attacking him with her fists and nails. Give me money! Now! I deserve it! You owe me! Be useful to me!" she demanded while screaming like a banshee. "Get off, you crazy hag!" Egon yelled while trying to fend her off. Megan panicked and froze in place at this. But Izuku didn't and sprang into action, jumping on her back and ripping her off Egon, yelling, "Get off the professor, you crazy lady!" But she screamed loudly and harshly while suddenly getting a strange burst of strength and ripping Izuku off her and screaming, "Get off me, you quirkless runt!" Izuku was thrown against the wall where he was nearly knocked unconscious. She shivered in disgust and yelled, "How dare you touch me? I'm calling the police!" But she never got the chance to pull her phone from her workout jeans as Egon saw red. He quickly grabbed one of the small decorative plant pillars and used it like a bat. The last thing she saw was Egon's furious expression before being hit so hard she flew to the opposite end of the room. Egon breathed hard while dropping the decor and commented, "Call that, bitch!" Sometime later, the police had been called and detained the woman. She was shoved into a cop car, but not without yelling and making wild demands before finally being driven away. Meanwhile, Egon spoke to another officer about everything that had happened. The officer had a sober expression on his face, as he had been there for the last time when the laboratory was invaded. After penciling down the last bit of information, the officer told him in an apologetic tone, "I'm so sorry that you've experienced even more trouble at your facility, Professor." Egon waved off his apology and assures him, "There's no need to apologize, officer. Compared to what we've been through, this wasn't so bad. And to be fair, I kinda let it happen when I should have turned her away at the door." He tips up the brim of his hat and tells the scientist, "Well, I'm glad you didn't. She has several warrants for her arrest in several prefectures. You've done us a service." "Glad I could help," Egon dryly chuckled. Just before the lawmen left, Egon stopped him and inquired, "Oh, one more thing before you go. Could you look into something for me?" The officer raised an eyebrow and replied, "That depends if it's within my reach of power. She had another son some time ago, my half-brother. He turned to villainy. Could you find out who he is and where he is?" He explained to him. Again the officer raised an eyebrow and asked him, "Couldn't you do that yourself? You have resources and tech." "I am a scientist, not a PI," Egon shoots back. The officer laughs dryly and tells him, "Fair enough, I'll see what I can do, but I make no promises." Egon nods and thanks the man before going over to Izuku, who was being tended by a doctor for his injuries. Kneeling, he asks, "How are you holding up?" Izuku rubs a sore spot on his head and says with a dry laugh, "A bit sore, but I'm fine." Egon sighs as he sits next to him and asks, "Remember what we talked about?" "Don't know, we talked about a lot of things," Izuku says back with a dry laugh. Egon shoots him a look and reminds him, "About you taking unnecessary risks?" Izuku looks away in shame and tells him apologetically, "I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. I saw you in danger and I blanked. I just acted." Egon sighed and ruffled his hair without telling him, "You are a good kid, Izuku. You just have a fuzzy head with a good heart." Izuku smiles a bit until Egon firmly grasps his head, turning it to him as he tells him in a serious tone, "But don't make stuff like that a habit. I can protect myself." Izuku soberly nods in a reply, his gaze growing distant once again. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Sorry about the background noise in the last quarter of the video. It's very, very windy and I can't really do anything about that. Plus I don't have really good soundproofing, it's just literally a pillow. Or maybe in a blanket that's surrounding it. Not really good. Sometimes, well, you can sometimes hear my mic peaking. Anyway, this chapter gets introduced with Egon's mother and his family life a bit, which is like really cool. I love the detail about how his father was quirkless. I mean, it makes sense in hindsight. Anyway, since I read a bit ahead of this chapter, like way ahead, I think I was up to like chapter 70. I know who his brother is, but I'm not going to really spoil it. Anyway, guys, I'll see you guys later. Bye!